He was known as the internet's first serial killer, a man who posed as a successful businessman, promising young women brighter futures only to vanish them into darkness. From forging letters to tricking families, to taking control of lives through sadistic slave contracts, John Robinson mastered the art of deceit both online and in person, evading capture for nearly 2 decades. How did this charming con man, who presented a life of luxury and success, conceal such horrifying secrets? John Robinson was a serial killer, a con man, an embezzler, a kidnapper, and a forger. He began recruiting women to work for him in 1984 and continued until he was apprehended in 2000. He hired women for his non-existent company, promising them a better life, and then disappeared. He would pretend to be them and write letters to their relatives saying they were fine and enjoying their lives. He was dubbed the internet's first serial killer because he found his victims through the internet. John Edward Robinson was born to Alberta and Henry Robinson on December 27, 1943, in Cicero, Illinois. He was the third of 5 siblings. His father worked as a machinist and drank often. Alberta, John's mother, was a strict woman. She believed that if her children did not behave and had no manners when they went anywhere, it would be a reflection of her. If her children are misbehaving, her parenting is poor. If her children are well-behaved, her parenting is excellent. It was also alleged that she was emotionally distant from her children. Alberta believed that John had the most potential of her children, and that he would do great things and have opportunities. John was described as an excellent child in general. He was a member of the Boy Scouts, did well in school, was a pleasant boy with good manners, and many others aspire to be like him. In 1956, John became an Eagle Scout, and the group even flew to London to perform for Queen Elizabeth. He was a student at Chicago's Quigley Preparatory Seminary. At the age of 18, it was an all-boys school for aspiring priests and graduates. When John looked at his father, he realized he didn't want to be like him. John needed money, and not just any money, but quick, easy money. Instead, he decides to attend Morton Junior College in Serco, Illinois, to pursue a career as a radiographer, also known as an X-ray technician. But he leaves after 2 years. His mindset was that he would earn the degree whether or not he finished college, so he forges a diploma along with forged letters of recommendation and goes job hunting. He eventually gets a job as an X-ray technician in a Chicago hospital. He meets a woman named Nancy Jo Lynch. They marry and relocate to Kansas City, where Nancy quickly discovers she is pregnant. She gave birth to their first child, John Jr., in 1965, their daughter Kimberly in 1967, and twins Christopher and Christine in 1971. After 3 years at the hospital, John was fired because they found out his credentials were fake and that he embezzled over $33,000 into his bank account. He received no jail time and was sentenced to 3 years probation. In 1970, he accepted a position as an insurance salesman with the R.B. Jones Company, and he broke his probation by relocating to Chicago. He was caught stealing from the company for his benefit. His probation was also extended by 3 years with no jail time. John went on to work as a scoutmaster, baseball coach, and Sunday school teacher. It was a persona he maintained. He had a great wife and children. He made money as well as stole it, but no one knew, and his life appeared to be ideal. John despised working for others. He became interested in entrepreneurship and established his own company in 1971. And he decided to relocate himself and his family to Missouri. A new state, a new person, a new life, a new career, and a new perspective. As things begin to look better for John and his company, he breaches his probation by traveling to another state without permission. He is then caught, spends 2 weeks in jail, and returns to normal. He begins falsifying documents and giving them to investors to con them into investing in his company, which is his bank account. Some people invested, while others did not. When a corporation discovers that the documents are forged, they notify the authorities, and John is sentenced to 6 months in prison for fraud. After completing his sentence, John forged letters from others, including the mayor, advising them to invest in his company, his bank account. He hosted a luncheon where he was presented with a plaque for Man of the Year by the Kansas City Area Association of Shelter Workshops. He organizes the entire event with his own money and his award, which is awarded to him by another corporation. When word of this gathering spread, the corporation stated, "We did not participate in this luncheon." And after some investigation, it was discovered that he is a fraud who has served time in prison for fraud and probation. He takes a new job as a manager and continues to steal. It was a bank account for his wife and children this time. He planned to use the money to cheat on his wife. It doesn't take long for them to notice John is back doing the same thing, so he gets 60 days in jail and 5 years probation. After his release in 1982, he returned to his fraudulent business. He started a hydroponics business, which is where plants and crops are grown without soil, and he stole $25,000 from someone he worked with. The man he stole the money from was saving for his dying wife's medical care. Murders. Paula Godfrey. In 1984, John owns 2 fake shell companies. And a shell company is a company that has no office, no staff, no building, and only exists on paper, but it does have a bank account. He meets 19-year-old Paula Godfrey, who is working as a secretary, and offers her a job. He informs her that she can reach the top since she has a strong work ethic and that he is the CEO and she will work as a sales representative. After she accepts the job, John informs her that she must travel to Texas for training, with all expenses covered by the company, and that she will be compensated for her time there. John asks Paula to sign many blank pieces of paper and provide him with a list of her closest relatives and friends' names, phone numbers, and addresses. E said that this was because she would be so busy with training that it would be difficult for her to stay in touch with her friends and family. So he would handle it for her, taking the burden off her shoulders. He would write the letters, send them out, and constantly state that she would get paid. Paula's family is overjoyed for her, since she will be able to try something new in a fresh setting. Paula informs her family that she will contact them and see them once training is over. After a while of not hearing from Paula, they travel to Texas to visit her because she told them about the hotel where she was staying. When they get to the front desk to ask for Paula, they are told that no one by the name of Paula checked in. They are perplexed. They are aware of John's existence because she is supposed to be working for him, and they go to speak with him. And John appears perplexed as well. He stated that he has been attempting to contact her but has received no response. Her parents decide to file a missing person report, telling the police all that has happened since Paula was offered this new job and training in Texas, and the man who recruited her is John Robinson, whom they suspect knows a little bit more than they do. When the police arrive to interview John, he appears confused and tries to reach her. Police return to Paula's home and tell her parents what John told the police officer, and they don't trust him at all. They receive a typewritten letter from their daughter in the mail a few days later. She writes in the letter that she is okay and does not want to visit her family. Her parents take the letter to the police station and explain that she did not write it, that the phrasing does not sound like her, but that the signature at the bottom is hers. And because the letter was typed, they couldn't tell if it was her handwriting or not using forensic handwriting analysis. The letter was examined by the police. They stated that it did not indicate John did anything to her. She's 19, of legal age, and there's nothing to look into. As a result, the missing persons report was thrown out, and Paula Godfrey was never found. Back at home, the pattern in the house and John's marriage was not ideal. He continued to have affairs with other women, and when Nancy Jo found out, she threatened to take the kids away, but he begged her not to because he would stop having affairs. John became interested in S&M, meaning sadism, the infliction of pain, whereas masochism is receiving pain for sexual enjoyment and pleasure. He enjoyed the concept of being in charge. He was the master, and he had a slave woman. There were clubs for the BDSM world. He liked the idea of being in control. He was the master and had a woman who was the slave. 1985. In 1985, John had an idea that he wanted to target young, unmarried mothers. He would call other hospitals and inform them that he works for a company whose aim is to provide work training to young moms. They would pay for accommodation as well as an $800 monthly stipend. Some hospitals are suspected of a scam. One hospital does get him acquainted with Lisa Stacy, a 19-year-old woman with a 4-month-old daughter. He changed his name from John Robinson to John Osborne and meets her at a Kansas City women's shelter. He promised Lisa a job, an apartment, and daycare for her daughter. No money would be taken from her wallet, and all expenses will be covered. John requested her to sign numerous pages of paper and give him a list of her closest relatives and friends' addresses. And just like Paula, he informs her that she will be extremely busy with training and that he will relieve her of the burden by staying in touch with her friends and family. A few days after Lisa leaves for training, John contacts his brother. His brother is married, and they were struggling to have their own child, and they were considering adoption. John informs the couple that there is a baby, that her mother committed suicide, and that the infant is all alone, with no other family. He informs them that the adoption could be finalized for $5,500 in legal fees. After paying John, they received a 4-month-old infant along with what appeared to be genuine adoption paperwork. A judge and 2 lawyers signed the documents. Lisa's friends and family begin to receive letters in the mail informing them that her training is going well, that she is doing well, and that she is pleased to be in a position where she can provide for herself and her daughter, and she is eager to see them. Lisa's parents thought this was strange because it didn't feel like it was their daughter. So when Lisa told them where she was going and what she was going to do there, they looked up the company and discovered that it does not exist. Her parents went to the police, and they were aware of John because of Paula Godfrey. But the police couldn't figure out why he would scam women, and then the women would disappear. They stated that there was no physical proof, and that no one knew whether or not foul play was involved. They questioned John, who was very cooperative. John stated that her training was completed, and that he had not spoken to her since. But the police didn't believe it. They didn't believe he had murdered them, but rather that a prostitution ring was operating in the apartment he had rented for them. They arrest John for running a prostitution ring, and he is released after posting bail. The FBI becomes involved and places John under surveillance. They arrest him again for violating his probation, sentence him to 7 years in prison, release him after 1 year, and put him back on probation. Despite her family's best attempts, Lisa has never been discovered. (1987) 2 years later, in 1987, John posts an ad for a vacant position at his non-existent company. Catherine Clampett, 27, is seeking a fresh start and sees this ad and thinks it would be ideal. She contacts John and informs her family that she is delighted to leave. She has a daughter, but she intended to leave her at home in Wichita Falls, Texas, with her family to focus on her new career in Kansas City. Catherine's family attempts to contact her several times, but receives no response. They went to the police, but they had no idea about John. They filed a missing persons report, but she has never been found. Time in prison. John was sentenced to Western Missouri Correctional Facility for multiple fraud charges from 1987 to 1993 and served 6 years. While there, he meets Beverly Bonner, the prison librarian, who is 49 years old. John works his charm on her and tells her that he has a business and that it would be nice to have a woman by his side to help him run it. She liked the concept. Beverly is married to a prison doctor, and she begins an affair with John the convict. After John was released, she was supposed to move to Kansas with him. Beverly is overjoyed at this point since she is in a new place with a new man. Her divorce has been finalized with the doctor, and she is receiving alimony. The checks were initially delivered to her mother's residence, but after she relocated, she instructed her mother to forward them to a P.O. box in Kansas City. Beverly's family never hears from her again. Beverly's mother continues to receive letters from her daughter, saying that she is loving life, that she is traveling more, that life is great, and please keep sending the alimony checks. Beverly's mother forwards the checks to the P.O. box, and it is John who cashes the checks and receives the money. The age of the internet. John found the World Wide Web in the 1990s. John takes advantage of this. He would enter these various internet chats with the username Slavemaster, indicating that he was looking for women who enjoyed being submissive to their partners, and he would be the dominant one. He meets 45-year-old Sheila Faith, a single mother of a 15-year-old daughter who is in a wheelchair due to spina bifida, a birth disorder in which the spine does not develop properly, and receives a monthly Social Security disability check of roughly $1,000. On the internet, John presents himself as a wealthy businessman and philanthropist. John informs Sheila that he is a farmer and owns a farm in Kansas, and that it would be lovely to have some company on the farm. He tells her not to worry since he has enough money to cover her daughter's medical bills, and all she had to do was stand by his side and assist him to run his farm and caring for the farm animals. Sheila and her daughter relocated from Fullerton, California to Kansas City in 1994. They go and are never seen or heard from again, but not before all of her Social Security payments are transferred to a P.O. box in Kansas City, and John, of course, collects all of that money for the following 7 years. John is having a great time in the BDM world. He tries to persuade almost all of the women he communicates with on the internet to relocate to Kansas City with him, and many of them say no. John created a slave contract, and when a woman signed it, it meant that he had complete authority over the women's minds and bodies, and he is to be addressed as master, and the women must obey every command he gives. When John posted the contract online, some women expressed an interest in what was stated in it. He had several affairs with women while using this contract, and some women wanted out of it, such as those who had jobs and social lives, and didn't want those people to find out. John didn't care, stating that if they didn't pay him money, he would expose them. 1999. In 1999, he meets Izabela Lewicka, a 21-year-old Polish immigrant residing in Indiana. He promises her a new apartment because she is fresh out of college. He tells her she doesn't have to pay rent and that all expenses will be covered. She then relocates to Kansas City, where John, who is still married to his wife, proposes to Izabela. They both walk down to the county registrar and file for a marriage license, which they pay for, but never pick up. Izabela informed her parents that she was married, that her husband was a successful businessman with money, that she was in love, she was happy, and that she wanted to be left alone. She never revealed the man's name to her family. Izabela goes missing shortly after. Izabela, according to John, signed a 115-page contract giving him access and control over every part of her life, including her bank accounts and emails. When John told someone about Izabela, the person he was speaking with asked, "Where is this girl you're talking about? I haven't seen her yet." Izabela was caught smoking marijuana and was deported back to Poland, according to John. Shortly after Izabela, John meets a licensed practical nurse named Suzette Truton in one of the online chat rooms and offers her a job at his Kansas City business. She was to go to Europe for training, and he would take care of everything. All she had to do was give him her Social Security number. Never give your SSN to anyone. Suzette and her 2 dogs travel to Kansas City, where John arranges a hotel room and instructs her to sign a stack of blank paper and provide him with all of her relatives' and friends' names and addresses. Normally, John would take explicit images of the women he met, but with Suzette, he decided to try something different, such as recording. Suzette is gone after she signs the 115-page paper contract, and they make a recording. After a few days, John calls Animal Services to report that 2 dogs on his property had been abandoned. When the animal control officers arrive to pick up the dogs, they notice that the dogs have been well cared for. They are clean, appear to have eaten, and do not appear to have been abandoned. Nonetheless, they take the dogs and place them in a new home. Suzette's mother begins to receive letters addressed to Suzette, but she does not think it is her daughter. John becomes more reckless and lazy in his work over time. He's been doing this since 1984, and nothing he's done has been reported in the news. Police's radar and disturbing discovery. By late 1999, John is on the radar of police in Kansas and Missouri because his name appears in every missing person report. The police believe they have enough evidence to arrest John, and this is where they discover he is looking for his next victim, a mother with a teenage daughter. Police thought the same thing would happen. They go missing, and it's a dead end. In June 2000, John is arrested after a woman files a sexual misconduct complaint against him. And then another woman comes forward and accuses him of stealing her sex toys. The theft charge was able to get them a search warrant, and they search the home that he shares with his wife Nancy, taking computers, papers signed by women who had gone missing, and photos and videos of women who had gone missing. They also explore the farm in Kansas, where they discover two 85-pound chemical drums containing the remains of two women subsequently identified as Isabella Lewicka and Suzette Troughton. They obtain a search warrant for John's Missouri storage facility and discover three 85-pound chemical drums holding bodies subsequently identified as Beverly Bonner, Sheila Faith, and her 15-year-old daughter Debbie Faith. All 5 women had suffered from blunt force trauma. When authorities discovered these finds, they were able to connect John to the other missing women who had never been found, including Lisa Stacy, Paula Godfrey, and Catherine Clampett. Trial. John's trial began in 2002 when he is charged with the murders of Isabella Lewicka, Lisa Stacy, and Suzette Troughton. He gets convicted on all counts in the longest criminal trial in Kansas. He was sentenced to death for Isabella and Suzette, and to life in prison for Lisa. He is sentenced to 5 to 20 years in prison for interfering with parental custody by kidnapping Lisa's daughter and giving her away, 20.5 years for kidnapping Suzette, and 7 months in Kansas for stealing, which included anything from stolen checks to sex toys. John was also charged with murder in Missouri. John's lawyers wanted him to avoid trial in Missouri because the state was all for the death penalty. His lawyer devised a plea deal in which he would avoid the death penalty if he showed authorities where the bodies of Paula Godfrey, Catherine Clampett, and Lisa Stacy were. Of course, John refused to cooperate. They reached an agreement, and John was convicted of capital murder in October 2003 for the deaths of Paula Godfrey, Catherine Clampett, Sheila and Debbie Faith, Lisa Stacy, and Beverly Bonner. For each murder, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Aftermath. The Kansas Supreme Court overturned Suzette and Lisa Stacy's murder convictions on technicalities in 2015, but upheld Isabella's death sentence. John Robinson, at 79 years old, is imprisoned on death row in the El Dorado Correctional Facility in Kansas, which also houses Dennis Radar, dubbed the BTK Killer. What a small world we live in. Nancy decides to divorce after 41 years of marriage in 2005, citing irreconcilable differences and incompatibility as the reason. Lisa Stacy's daughter, Tiffany, whose name was changed to Heather Robinson, launched a civil complaint against the Truman Medical Center and the social worker Karen Gaddis, who placed her mother in contact with John in 2006. Heather wanted to stay with her adoptive parents despite knowing she was adopted because she had grown to love them as her parents. They cared for her, protected her, and raised her as if she were their daughter because the one thing they wanted more than anything was a child of their own. And Heather was a gift after struggling for years to try for one. Lisa's mother, Heather's grandmother, writes a letter in which she states that if Heather is happy and they have been good to her and raised her and protected her, she does not feel it is her duty to take her away from the people who raised her. Heather and her grandmother have met and remain close. Heather was legally adopted by the couple when she was 18 years old, this time in an actual legal adoption. In the same year, 2007, they reached an undisclosed settlement with the hospital, and Heather split the money with her biological grandmother. In the same year, she wins a second judgment prohibiting John from profiting from books or documentaries. Kansas and Missouri police officers are well aware that there is a long time that is unaccounted for, and that there may be further victims that they are unaware of or have yet to locate. An investigator said, "He's maintained the secrets about what he's done with the women. He won't ever tell. It's the last control that he's got. There are probably other barrels waiting to be opened, other bodies waiting to be found."